the world is focused on a possible U.S. strike on Iran. At the same time, Israel is preparing for a potential attack of its own against Hamas in Gaza.
Israel believes Hamas cannot be disarmed without military action. CBN's Paul Petit brings us the story from Jerusalem.
Escorted by the Israeli Defense Forces, CBN News visited an outpost in central Gaza, just 200 yards from the Yellow Line, dividing Gaza between Israeli and Palestinian control. It's a place where troops here say Hamas skirmishes and attacks occur regularly, despite the ceasefire.
In this area specifically, but all across the Yellow Line, Hamas keeps passing the Yellow Line on a daily basis, testing our troops, even carrying out attacks just this week, severely injuring one of our troops.
The objectives for these Israeli soldiers are defending the Yellow Line and finding, then dismantling Hamas's vast tunnel network, where more than half have yet to be discovered.
This is maybe the world's largest terror tunnel infrastructure in history, and this is something that's going to take time to find all of it and to deal with all of it. And we're not even talking about the tunnels that are across the Yellow Line, that we are not dealing with them right now.
Here in Gaza, implementing the disarmament of Hamas has remained unclear, with Israeli officials increasingly believing that stripping the terror group of its weapons will be impossible without the IDF taking military action.
One thing is clear, they do not want to disarm, even though they committed to it, and someone needs to make them.
In Jerusalem, Prime Minister Netanyahu returned from his 7th meeting with President Trump, saying he's skeptical a good deal could be worked out with Iran.
If indeed an agreement is reached, then it must include the elements that are very important from our perspective, from Israel's perspective, and in my view, not only Israel's. It is not only the nuclear issue, it is also the ballistic missiles and also the Iranian proxies.
While the groundwork for talks with Iran continue, the Israeli Navy is conducting drills with its warships, while President Trump confirmed through a post on Truth Social that a second aircraft carrier is being deployed to the Middle East.
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead.
The Trump administration has denied stirring further protests in Iran, but did admit it smuggled thousands of Starlink terminals into the country to counter the internet blackout imposed by the regime. Paul Petit, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, this is definitely decision time for the Middle East. What's going to happen to the government in Iran? Is there going to be further negotiations? Is there going to be a U.S. strike? In my view, that they need to move on, and the people of Iran have cried out for freedom. They've attempted 5 different revolutions just in the past decade. And you look at that and go, it's time for them to be free. In Gaza, Gaza needs to have no military weapons at all. And to say it's okay for Hamas to have weapons and for them to rearm, we know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to attack Israel again. They haven't changed their thoughts at all about Israel, and they want to wipe Israel off the map. They shouldn't ever have any weapons to actually accomplish that. Well, in other news, the Department of Homeland Security is headed for a shutdown. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, the partial shutdown appears certain as members of Congress left Washington for a 10-day recess without a deal. CBN's White House correspondent Kelly Wright has a closer look at the political stalemate.
Democrats blocked funding bills on Thursday. They're insisting on strict reforms to ICE protocols following 2 fatal shootings by federal agents in Minneapolis last month.
The Americans are tired of masked agents conducting warrantless operations in their communities. Secret police. They're tired of chaos, secrecy, and zero accountability. That is not what law and order looks like.
Democrats want ICE agents to have better identification, to stop wearing masks, use body cameras, and use of judicial warrants. Republicans and President Trump have rejected the Democrats' demands, believing the conditions would hinder law enforcement. On Thursday, White House border czar Tom Homan announced the ICE operation in Minneapolis is over after more than 4,000 arrests.
We've had great success with this operation, and we're leaving Minnesota safer. The surgeons leaving Minnesota safer, Minneapolis safer, because of the cooperation we got with the counties and the state and local law enforcement responding to our needs. I'll say it again. It's less of a sanctuary state for criminals.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is concerned about the impact the shutdown will have. She thinks it sends the wrong message.
When you think about it, every other portion of the federal government has been funded except Homeland Security. That's telling the rest of the world the Democrat Party doesn't think that protecting America is safe.
If the partial shutdown happens, it impacts TSA workers, FEMA, the Coast Guard, cybersecurity operations, but core ICE and Customs and Border Patrol will continue operations under separate funding. Members of Congress leaving town are on strike to get back to Washington sooner if a deal can be reached. Kelly Wright, CBN News.
Turning now to an issue that's become a hot topic in recent years, we could see a major turning point in the controversy over transgender surgeries for minors. A second major medical group has changed its position on children going through these surgeries and now advises against it. CBN's medical reporter Lori Johnson has this story.
In the U.S., it's estimated that each year about 1,000 girls seeking to become boys have their breasts surgically removed. The number of procedures could see a drastic drop now that the group representing over 90% of all plastic surgeons recommends against such surgeries.
The ASPS recommends surgeons should delay gender-related breast, chest, genital, and facial surgery until the patient is 19 years old, adding a substantial proportion of children experience resolution or significant reduction of distress by the time they reach adulthood, absent medical or surgical intervention. The Trump administration applauded the move, saying future doctors will look back on sex-rejecting procedures for minors the way we look back on lobotomies. Surgeon and transgender whistleblower Dr. Eitan Haim agrees.
The only form of justice that can be done is for the people responsible for this to go to prison, to have such severe consequences that they spend the rest of their life in a cage. Because what they did to these children and these vulnerable adults can never be forgiven. They can seek forgiveness from a higher power, but it's our responsibility as a civilized society to put these people in a cage for their crimes.
Dr. Haim says this could be a watershed moment.
So it's like the house of cards. Once you start pulling out the aces and the kings from the base, everything starts falling.
Indeed, the day after the plastic surgeons issued their statement, the American Medical Association stated surgical interventions on minors should be generally deferred to adulthood.
And, granted, it was very tepid, but the fact that they even entertained any type of skepticism is a monumental victory.
Nevertheless, Dr. Haim believes the American Academy of Pediatrics and other groups will continue to support sex change interventions on minors like hormones and surgery.
Because their guilt is so deep that for them to acknowledge that they did something wrong is to open themselves up for not only this deep sense of moral failure, but also a massive amount of legal liability.
That could be part of the motivation, as the week before the plastic surgeon group issued its statement, a jury handed down New York's first malpractice verdict against a plastic surgeon and psychologist. A jury awarded Fox Varian of Yorktown Heights $2 million in damages for a double mastectomy she received at age 16, then later regretted.
Many of these individuals are now irreversibly sterile. They cannot go back. They'll never have biological children. And much of their future was ripped away from them.
Psychologist Joseph Nicolosi says too many colleagues talk children and their parents into trans treatments.
The only thing that's going to really change this around in the psychological profession is going to be class action lawsuits, where many young people come forward and say, I was pushed into surgery. I was not told there were any other options. I was given this label as trans when I was very young, and this was not fair.
So while some healthcare providers still advocate transgender procedures for minors, the direction could be changing. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Those lawsuits may very well be coming. Gordon?
Well, the UK led the charge on this. They were the first medical association that says, well, the outcomes you anticipated from performing these procedures on minors, and the justification was we need to change their mental outlook, and in that if we have the physical change, then all these mental health issues are going to go away. Well, it was shown by medical evidence that that didn't really work. And so now we're into, well, what have you done? You've made a permanent change. You're talking about permanent physical change. You're talking about sterility. You're talking about denying them children and that future as a parent and ultimately a grandparent. But don't think for a minute this thing has gone away. That there isn't this really strong pressure, and I don't understand, other than a spiritual answer, why there's such a strong pressure. But it's just ringing in my ears. One of the leaders of this gender transition in the University of Vanderbilt says, if you don't buy into this ideology, if you raise objections to it, you can't be employed here. So it hasn't gone away. The whistleblowers in hospitals, disclosing what was really going on, well, they lost their jobs. They lost hospital privileges because of it. Here's the curious thing, that it's the trial lawyers who are going to make the difference, that they're going to file these cases. They're going to win large monetary awards. I'm not sure it's going to be a class action needed, but I remember in law school reading all about a famous automaker who didn't put a $5 rubber insulator in their gas tanks, making those cars subject to rear-end collisions that would end up in explosions that would kill and severely maim and burn people, all over a $5 rubber lining. They discovered in the records of the company that it was some actuarial saying, well, we'll make more money if we don't have this in the gas tank. And that led to huge lawsuits and huge recoveries for the families involved. Are we going to see that? But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to health insurance. If health insurance say, we will not provide malpractice coverage for this surgery, well, it will stop overnight.